All right, chapter 8 of the Isis Thesis. The return to the eye or holograph. Penrose, Pembroke, Huff, and their upside down vision. I'm putting this down so I can read. Alright. We must now discover whether or not the central ideas and idea strands in the pyramid text and coffin text continue to support our motto in developing matrices, which are centered on the idea that the Egyptian afterlife exists at the quantum cellular level. The word holography is derived from the Greek word holos, meaning whole, and graph, meaning writing. It is apparent that the foundation of form signified by Atum's throne is the whole writing, the holograph, and the DNA for the forthcoming creation. Within the movement toward infinity to or back into the I or origin of creation, the deceased states, I have come into the land of fire, and I am content with the manifestations of the ithiphallic one. In coffin text 1001, one who is ithiphallic would have an erect phallus, which suggests the primordial state just before Atum self-generated the creation, a state we might compare to the stiffening of the core during a supernova explosion, but a better comparison would be to a Higgs field perched above its zero energy value and the resultant outward blast that drives space to swell. Inflationary cosmologists believe that this inflaton field provided the energy and negative pressure for the outward burst of repulsive gravity that initially made space expand and inflate our universe. So the deceased is at the origin of creation, the island of fire with the ithiphallic one. He then states, "Open out the ritual book for me." He further claims that a writing of what I have said has been bought, which has been placed for them in their remembrance. In coffin text 1013. Atum's throne equals first DNA equals foundations of form equals the ritual book equals the whole writing, the word, the holograph. So all of those things mean the same thing when you hear it. Passage to the quantum holographic universe. In light of the Egyptian focus of the Eye of Horus, what applies a center of light, intelligence, or influence, suppose we ask ourselves if modern scientific research supports any connection between the mechanism of vision and the quantum holographic creation. Actually, proof for a quantum holographic universe can be found in Roger Penrose's research on retinal structure, Carl Pembroke's research on the retina's processing of exoreceptive sensation into the spectral domain, and Gerald Huff's 8-around-1 geometry of the retina. In examining the phenomena of blind sight, physicist Roger Penrose found that the visual cortex is more associated with the conscious perception than other areas. The retina is the one place where action at the single quantum level can have importance for neural activity. In addition, after 50 years of brain research, Carl Pembroke's holonomic theory for the example of vision summarizes evidence that the retinal image is transformed to a holographic or spectral domain. The concept of spectral domain includes the idea that the colors, tones, and all exoreceptive sensations, including those dependent on spatial-temporal configurations, that is, shapes or of surfaces and forms, can be analyzed into their component frequencies of oscillation. According to Pembroke, the spectral energy domain is the Fourier transform of space-time. In other words, the input to and the output from a lens performs a Fourier transform. Our familiar space-time lies on one side of the transform, with a distributed enfolded holographic-like order called the frequency or spectral domain on the other side. The retina and the visual cortex process an invertible transformation from a space-time image to a processing domain of at least 8 dimensions, 4 in space-time, 4 spectral. When the spectral dimension dominates a perception, space and time evolution ceases and spatial boundaries disappear. Likewise, physicist Gerald C. Huth claims that the eye function on a higher level determined solely by its geometry. The retina is a logical spaced array of electron quantum confinement sensors, or the actual spatial design of the Fourier transform. He claims the diffrotrometric surface on the retina suggests the vision process takes place in the Fourier or frequency domain, which is some sort of two-dimensional frequency transform. In other words, the retina detects light as a wave or classical physics, while confining the absorbing electron to quantum confined dimensions. Huth also states that the ratio of the sizes of cones to rods of the human retina, 1.8 to 2.1, corresponds to the visible bandwidth, 700 to 400 nanometers, that determine our visual response. For example, fish have larger receptors and can see in the infrared bandwidth, whereas insects have smaller receptors, resulting in an ultraviolet vision. This human retina ratio dictates the geometry of exactly 8 smaller rods able to fit around each larger cone. The same 8 around 1 retinal motif is found in the visual organs of all species and chloroplast organelles of photosynthetic plants and algae. This motif, affirms Huth, is the Fourier objectification of the optical spectrum viewed by the eye. Needless to say, modern research supports the mechanism of vision as a passage into the quantum world, and the funerary texts often reference the process by the phrase upside down world.